Welcome. You're listening to New Day Talk Radio, where every day is a new day. You're listening to Consulting to Win with your host, Ralph White.
Good morning. I'm Ralph White, and we are Consulting to Win Radio, coming to you on New Day Talk Radio. And our program is about coaching people to win in the game of business. Winning is a result you can be accountable for, something you say you want and you achieve it. Business is a game we coach people to play in a win-win model to maximize their success. Our purpose is for you, the listener, to experience the value of working with a business coach. What we're asking you to do is to be listening for an idea or a possibility that you will put into action to grow your business. Remember, no action, no results. I'm here today with Mary Mullenhoff, a coach on staff with me that we work together, and we're here to help you, cause a win in your business. Mary, how are you this morning?
Great. Thank you for having me on your show today, Ralph.
It's always a pleasure to work with you, Mary. I'm looking at, it's been an exciting week. There's been a number of things that have happened. I was looking at what were some of the wins that clients have generated this week, and I've noticed that I've seen a number of clients that are doing a lot more marketing in their businesses. They're doing, this year, the year started out that, on a downturn for most businesses, and I was coaching people to do 10 times more marketing than they'd ever done before. And in January, the first quarter was a challenging quarter for a lot of the clients we work with, and they put that into effect. They did a lot of marketing, did a lot of the coaching, took the coaching, and what I'm starting to see is that that's paying off for them. That business is turning up. And
can you tell what they've done differently to?
Well, they've scheduled more time in their calendar.
Oh, see.
So they did. Where before they may have been doing 5 hours a week of marketing, or 5 hours a week of cold calling, or talking to people on the phone. They raised that to double the amount of time that they put into it. So they're putting more time, more effort into it, and out of that, and they're creating a bigger pool of opportunities, and as a result of that, I'm seeing them generating a lot more business at this time. I'm seeing a big increase in business this quarter.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you look at a sales force, whether they're a dedicated sales force or a person who's been assigned to sales, who does other things within an organization, regardless of who you're talking to, there's always a preference for, I'm going to do some marketing, I'm going to do some calling, I'm going to try to get some appointments, but they kind of go with a safe route. People they already know, or people who they've talked to recently before. But pretty much they all have a list of leads, and these leads are generally fairly qualified, in terms of there's somebody who has an ability to buy the services, but they haven't called them. And the person that they have to be, who they're being when they're engaging in this activity of selling or prospecting is, if I don't make this phone call now, someone else will get this piece of business.
Right.
And that's the feeling you have to have right before you pick up the phone and call them, because otherwise you'll always feel this reluctancy of, I may get rejected. And it's not you they're rejecting, it's the fact that you may or may not have called at the right time. And so this discussion today on prospecting is really perfect for these types of people, because the biggest issue or the biggest challenge with prospecting is making sure they're qualified leads.
Yeah, what I'm seeing with the clients that we're working with is that where you put your attention, where you focus, you will have an improvement. It's where you dial in on, where you put your time and your focus and your attention and your intention, you will make a difference. I work with one company that we actually work with like 11 people in that company. So we coach 11 people in this company, and they move from one. They've gone through the company and they'll focus on one thing, and all 11 managers will focus on an improvement in one area, and that area improves.
Oh, wow.
And then they'll focus on another area, and that area improves. And they put in, so they've gone through the company and consistently improved, that each area of the company. And then once they improve it, they keep it in that improved state. So they put in a system to keep it improved. So it isn't like it goes and improves and then they focus someplace else and it goes down. So I've seen that occur in companies where people will focus on something, improve it, and then take their attention off of it, and then it goes back down.
And it's also relates back to conversations you and I have had over the time on time management and how important it is to put things in time.
Right.
And if it's not on your schedule, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So if it becomes a routine, and prospecting is one of those things that you should say, okay, every couple of days I'm going to dedicate 30 minutes, an hour, 2-hour chunk of time. I will, that's when I'm going to do it, and it'll be on your calendar, and
Right.
Give yourself a little reminder. I used to do that. I used to, be in sales and marketing at various, times in my past career, and one of the things I would do is I'd find a conference room. I'd schedule it because you had to go through and schedule conference time, an empty conference room, because at my desk I would always get interrupted. And I would take all my material. Usually when I was prospecting, I would have beforehand, before calling anyone, mailed something out or sent something of interest. And so I had all that, the letters, the phone numbers, the email addresses. I'd take my laptop, I'd go into the conference room, I'd book it for 2 hours, and I'd just start going through the whole list. And I would try very hard not to discriminate. Not to say, I don't know if I want to call that guy, But I try to do things in somewhat of an organized manner. In other words, if I was going to be in a particular city a certain day, I would say, hey, that was a good reason to call. I'm going to be in, downtown LA on Thursday. What does that day look like to you? Can I come by and visit with you? We
Right.
can talk about this material I sent. And it would give me an opportunity to get in front of a whole lot of people that same day. So I felt like, and not wasting that parking, $20 parking for the day or that,
Right.
$40 gas bill to drive down to LA to meet with just one person. So it really maximized it. And what I found too, when you have multiple appointments in a day that you can schedule, which is again managing your time, it's I found that you learned from the previous one. So say I had a campaign and it was about, when I worked for an accounting firm, say the campaign had to be about, we were doing a business diagnostic, for example. And so I went to the first meeting, and after that first meeting, I learned, this was a common objection that came up from 2 or 3 of the people in that meeting. I now know and am armed with how to handle that on the next meeting. And then the next meeting would come, which was, say, an hour later or 2 hours later.
Right.
And then I'd say, by the way, this has come up before, and this is how we would handle it. And so with each meeting, I would get more and more confident. And I think that you need to realize that anytime there's a, glitch or something in your prospecting process, that you can always use that to learn for the next time you call someone.
Yeah, I always look at, in sales, it's like getting up to bat.
Yeah.
And it's what did I learn? And how can I use that to improve my game at the next time to bat? What did I learn, and how am I going to incorporate that in the next time I'm up? But something that I know you're a master prospector. I consider you to be the locksmith that can open any door. But I want to point to something about prospecting. If you stop and think about it, if you look at I look at a business as a system. And it starts with the hello, and it ends with the money, the check clearing the bank. And if you start with, I want more checks clearing the bank, and you back up from there, and you look at all of the different elements of a business, that there isn't anything, if there isn't any problem that you have in business that wouldn't be solved by having 10 times more opportunities for sales.
Oh, I agree with that 100%.
Because if you had 10 times more opportunities for sales, you'd have 10 times more sales, which would give you 10 times more income, which could give you 10 times more opportunities for profit, which would give you 10 times more opportunities for everything else.
Right.
So it's that prospecting, which is the source of the solution for almost everything in business. But people don't look at it that way. If you looked at it that way, you'd run to do this.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. I think what's great about the way you're talking, the words and the language you're using, is that it creates a positive way of looking at prospecting.
Right. It's a solution for everything.
Right. Where a lot of people have fear of it. They hear prospecting, they hear cold calling, and there's this instant, visceral, physical, emotional thing. But when you think of it in terms of the end result, and you know what? A lot of these people can't wait for somebody to call them and solve their problem.
Right.
So it's one of those things where if you can get your mindset into thinking that, it's better. It's not about you, it's about them.
Exactly.
It's a better way of focusing on it.
Excellent. So you mentioned campaign. That's an interesting word to use, when you're prospecting. So tell me more about the concept of a campaign. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, the campaign I found to be really useful because when you have an organization or a firm, say it's a consulting firm, or my case it was a very large accounting firm that also did a great number of consulting. There were so many activities that they were involved in all throughout the year. Lots of different campaigns. They had IPO conferences, and they had Entrepreneur of the Year awards. They had all kinds of projects. And from those, there were a tremendous number of leads. Leads are defined as a qualified prospect. So it's somebody who potentially has the ability to buy your services. And when you had all these leads, you had to have a systemized way of following up.
Mm-hmm. Now that's very important, because I was just talking to someone yesterday, and the previous week it was a new client, and they started out with, "I have no money," and I said, "Okay, I got that, and I need clients." And he says, so I said, "Great." I said, "So what kind of labor do you have?" And he says, "Well, I can't afford labor." And I said, "Okay, great. So what kind of, who do you have?" And he says, "Well, I have my son who's an MBA, and he's here for the summer." I said, "Great." I says, "So we'll use that. Send him out inviting people to come to your business." And he says, "Okay, I can do that." So he sent his son out for 3 days to the local neighborhood, inviting people to come to his business. His son come back with 50 business cards.
Oh, wow.
Of people that were interested in doing business with him. And then this week's comment was, "Oh my God, I now got these 50 business cards of people, and now I'm overwhelmed because I don't know what to do with them." I said, "Okay, so we need, like you said, we need a system for following up." It reminds me of the days when I would go to a trade show, and this is definitely not the way to do this. So this is not coaching on what to do. This is coaching on what not to do. I would go to a trade show. I would get 400 or 500 business cards in a trade show. I would come back. I would pick the top leads that and handle those immediately. The rest of them, I would put them in a cardboard box and set them in my closet and in my office. And I wouldn't get to them until the following year when I was getting ready to go back to the trade show again. And it's like, oh gosh, I didn't follow up from those last year. And I had years of cards in my closet from trade shows that I did nothing with. So because I didn't have a system for following up with them, I took care of just the ones that I considered to be the immediate possibilities, and I did nothing with the marketing of the other possibilities. So what are some of the things that you would do in the following up?
Well, That's a really good question, because it does kind of depend on what kind of resources you do have. I mean, for me, I was very fortunate to be working for such a large firm that we had a full marketing department. So when I would say we have a campaign to follow up on this IPO conference, we would have a CRM, or I don't want to use acronyms on the phone. So it's a
Customer
relationship management
right.
system, which is basically a sales tracking tool
Right.
for keeping track, like ACT or Goldmine, Salesforce.com, those kinds
Right.
of systems. So everything was in that system. All the information about the contacts and information about the fact that they'd attended the event, and if they had requested any information as well. So I did get picky about going through those first. The ones who requested information maybe have a more immediate need.
Okay.
So we had a campaign, and we would say, okay, letter number 1, for example, or package of information number 1 is going to go with the people who requested information. And those are the ones we'll follow up with first. Package number 2 is going to go out to all the people who didn't request information but who were there and probably had an interest in the area. So the letters would go out, and then I would give myself at least a week to let the snail mail happen, whatever. And
Okay.
then I would follow up either with a phone call or with an email, depending on whether I got them on the phone or not. And the majority of the time, if you're working for a company that's well known, it's pretty easy to get an appointment. If you're not, it's a little harder, and so you have to get more creative in how you approach it. But either way, when you get the appointment, you still have to be able to present something of value, and then have them want you to come back and sell something. So I think what's important when you do get on the phone with these people is to ask a lot of questions and to get a lot of information. Find out if they're already working with somebody. Do they have a need? And then if they have a need, are they already working with somebody? If they're not yet, they have a need, but it's in the future, it's still important to keep those people in your Rolodex. Because what I found is that oftentimes you would put those people aside and say, okay, I don't need them. And then a year later, I'd get an RFP, a blind RFP. Oh, yeah, I had your business card from meeting
Right.
you a year ago. Here's an RFP on this opportunity we have. And so you're bidding against, say 5 or 6 other people for the same business, where had you kept the relationship going,
Right.
maybe you could have nipped it in the bud a little bit at the beginning and at least had that extra foot in the door
Right.
and a relationship built that might help you close the deal quicker.
Yeah, I've had situations where I got a call from someone from Albuquerque. My sheet metal shop, when I had a fabrication company, was in Los Angeles. I got a call from a gentleman in Albuquerque. He had met me I had this trade show called a job shop show that I did every year for something like 19 years. Wow. And this gentleman called me and he said, 7 years ago, I met you at the job shop show and I saved your business card. I'm now director of purchasing at this company in Albuquerque. I need a good sheet metal shop. You impressed me at that show, and would you fly to Albuquerque and take a look at our work and bid on our work? And I said, certainly. So I did, and I got a contract, a very substantial contract,
Wow.
out of talking to someone at a trade show 7 years prior.
And he was probably in one of those cards in your closet.
Exactly.
That you could have folled up
that
on.
I could have followed up on, which I didn't.
And kept him in your loop. But still, it was great that it happened the way it did. But most of the time, it won't be that. You won't
Right.
be that lucky, because odds are that there'll be a lot of other people like you who have really good services who
Right.
they can go to who might be a little closer.
Right. Well,
So-
this was prior to me having a coach.
Oh,
This is these were in the years before I actually started working with a business coach.
these were in your learning
Right. Yeah.
category.
Once I actually started working with a business coach, I changed my practices. Because the coach would not allow me to do those types of things. Actually, gave me the coaching that you put them into a customer relationship management system. You keep track of them. You follow up with them. You send them letters. You You keep them in the system. Once you identify a qualified prospect, someone who has the potential of using your services, you put them into a system. I believe that they go into the system, and the only way they get out of the system is they either die or they tell you, take me out of the system. And when they tell you, take me out of the system, what that means is I take their email out, and I move it so I don't send them my newsletter, and I don't call them for about 1.5 to 2 years. That's what take me out of the system means.
Right.
So they never really get out of the system.
An interesting thing about that I found in the years that I worked in consultative sales for
Right.
lots of different companies was how much people, it's funny, in the 80s, say, people would go to work for a business and they would say, okay, this is where I'm going to retire. They had defined benefit plans and they had all that kind of stuff, and so they were kind of there to stay. Then like in the 90s, there was this huge like constant change. You'd stay at a place for 10 years and wow, that guy must be so happy where he is, because usually they've been recruited away or something. And what I found is in the 90s, that's when you saw a lot of change. And so if you weren't keeping track of these people, you would lose track of them.
Right.
And then pretty soon they'd show up somewhere else and you were one of the main bidders in that opportunity, and you're like, oh, I didn't ever keep up with that guy.
Right.
I should have kept in touch with him. And the next thing you know they're one of the decision makers. So it's, no matter how low on the totem pole they are today, if you're in business to be in business,
Right.
you're always going to run into these people, one way or the other, unless you completely switch careers.
Right.
They're likely to always stay either on the buy or the sell side, and
Right.
it's always good to know who they are.
Yeah. And that's the value of relationships.
Right.
I go back and where I say the value of your business is a function of relationships. I think that, when you look at a balance sheet and it says goodwill, I really think that what that means is it's the number of relationships that you have with employees, suppliers, and customers. If you have, 10 million customers and, 100,000 employees and, 10,000 suppliers, that would be more goodwill, have more value than if you had, one employee, 100 customers and 3 suppliers. So it's really the function of relationships that you've created in business that it creates the value of your business. So you want, when I talk to people and they say that their phone book is a pile of business cards, my relationships are all in Outlook, all tracked, all current, all able to access. I don't have business cards in the closet. I scan them. I put them into the system. They're very organized because I want to know how to access them, because that is the value of your business, and it's something that you want to keep track of, and that you want to be able to manage and contact these people, and and go back. It's and maintain that relationship, because part of prospecting is actually going back and connecting with people that you may not even it isn't you're not looking for a sale. So there's selling, which is talking to someone who has the potential of buying. But in prospecting, you could be talking to people who have no potential of buying, that is a relationship in the industry that may have a referral for you. Mm-hmm. So that's also goes into that prospecting time. You could spend time calling people that are in the industry or relationships that you have, asking them what's going on, what's happening in their business, or what's just getting updated with them, or updating them on what you're up to, just looking for opportunities, or just connecting. And out of that, two people in a conversation will generate possibilities. And so that fits into that prospecting time.
You know, it's a weird analogy, but it's a little bit like people who use internet dating. It's a little bit like that. I have a client who used internet dating for so many years in this area that he says everybody he dates now knows somebody else he's already dated.
Oh my.
But the point is, it's the same in sales.
Right.
You know, after a while, if you've worked in the same marketplace, you know, meaning Southern California, whatever, and you're in a similar industry, ultimately you're going to talk to somebody and they're going to know XYZ person who, hey, by the way, did you know that they're now the CFO who makes all the purchasing decisions at this company, and they're looking for somebody who's doing exactly what you do?
Right.
You know, and that's how that happens. You know, that kind of when we talked about it before, the 6th degree of separation. You know, it's getting closer and closer. You know, and the longer you stay in an industry, and the longer people, you know, move from one company to the next, the more and more it's important to keep track of those relationships, because at some point in time they are going to be your next sale.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to go back and talk about this campaign, because I'm still intrigued about that. So I'm a consulting company.
Okay.
And I'm going to a big event, and I'm going to be speaking at that event.
Okay.
So how would I set up a campaign at that event to take advantage of that?
Okay, so the first thing I would attempt to do is to find out who's attending the event, who are some of the attendees. And oftentimes, if you have a good relationship with the company that is sponsoring it, you'll get that. Or you could choose to be a sponsor as well. You could say to your company, hey, let's sponsor the breakfast or the breakout session or one of the lunches or one of the dinners or a dessert, you know, I mean, anything,
right,
just to get your foot in the door. Usually doing that gets you the list of clients.
Okay.
Or not the list of clients, but the list of participants. Then you take the list of participants, and beforehand, hopefully you'll get it, and you do a little strategy session with your team, and you figure out, well, who of all of these people have we been trying to get introductions to? And if there's an overlap, then you go to those first. Then so part of the campaign would be to, you know, kind of prioritize and say, let's go after these guys first. The second part of the campaign would say, well, everybody else who is there probably would have an interest in what we have to say. Let's send them something as well. And so part of the campaign is to create intentional bumping into people at this event. Part of it would be to, say you've got a particular person at a company that you want to meet, but someone else from that company's there, then it would be a networking of how does that person provide the introduction for you. Or, you know, different people in your team, you do a relationship map and you say, okay, you create a relationship with this guy, have him introduce me to this guy, and then over time you've infiltrated their company with relationships.
How do you do this intentional bump into?
Well, if you know, like say for example, you're doing a coaching trade show.
Okay.
And there's somebody attending this coaching trade show, and you're one of the speakers.
Right.
And somebody's attending the session that you're going to be at, and they were on our target list.
Right.
And you would say, Mary, I want to meet this person. So what I would do is I would go. Usually they have name badges.
Right.
So that's really easy. You just find the name, and then I would find a way to sit next to them or sit behind them or somehow figure out how to meet them. And then say, hey, you know, just strike up a conversation. You know, what I used to do is I would bump into them in the lunch. At the lunch, I would sit at that table and I would say, oh, so, you know, I'm Mary and I'm with Possibilities Unlimited. What's your name? And find out what they were doing. You know, just make it really light talk. And then all of a sudden you start talking about business and like, oh, are you looking for a coach? Because, you know, we have a coaching organization and we'd love to talk to you about that. And so I try to keep the business talk very minimal because I want to ask a lot of questions. I don't really want to be selling because I don't yet know if they're buying yet. You know, so a lot of what I do in those situations and the bumping into them is just be prepared for asking a lot of questions. Like I try to find out things like, who they're working with already, if they've ever worked with a coach before, what value do they see in coaching, what brought them to the seminar. I mean, that's the biggest question. What brought you to the seminar? What is so interesting? Is it a boondoggle that got them out of the office? Or are they truly needing, this kind of a service? Is it for themselves? Is it for one of their employees? Is it for a team of employees? So you'd ask all those questions and then, be armed with information. I also ask, a little bit more personal questions at times. And what I mean by personal isn't like, what's your birthday? But
Right.
things like, well, I'll give you an example. I have a client who happens to be able to hear from his left ear. So I try to find out something like that. So I always sit on, on his left side, because when I sit on his right side, I don't know what I'm saying. And what's interesting about that too is whoever sits on the right side of him will never get any business from this guy, because he just can't hear. He'd have to twist his head so far. So little things like that. I know it sounds awkward, but you want to find out things like, do they like to be contacted on the phone, or do they prefer email? There's some people who will absolutely never pick up their phone. So you making 20 phone calls is never going to get them on the phone. So it makes it, so part of what you're trying to find out from this bumping into them, what do they like to do? Do they like to play golf? Do they like to play tennis? Do they like to watch the Lakers? I mean, if you sat next to me and you wanted to sell me something, you took me to a Laker game, I'd buy it,
Right.
Because I love the Lakers.
Right.
So that kind of thing, like you'd find out those kinds of things about the person, and then make it a little more personalized when you then follow up. It's easier than just saying, oh, I'm Mary from Possibilities Unlimited. You said that you had a coaching need. I'd like to follow up with you on that. You could say more like, we had lunch. It was really fun. You talked about how much you love the Lakers. I love them too. Let's go to a Laker game. Then at the Laker game, that's a second opportunity to meet with them. And the third touch, because I met them at the seminar, I talked to them on the phone, and then now they're coming with me to a Laker game.
You make it sound very strategic.
Oh, it is. The whole thing's strategic, because we used to have all these little rules of thumb. It takes 5 touches to get somebody to buy from you.
Right.
So if they meet you and they need something, they probably won't buy from you because they don't trust you yet. So part of it is for them to get to know you.
Right.
And each time, you're not always talking business, but you try to give them a little bit of something that where you've heard a need, but you don't address it right away, and then later you say, oh, by the way, did I ever tell you that Ralph worked with somebody and he helped them do A, B, C, and that's exactly what they need at that moment? But I don't push it any further other than planting that seed. And then we keep talking and chatting away, and then they go, oh, you know what you mentioned about Ralph when he did that? Is there any way I could talk to him about it? Then they're asking you for the business. You're
Right.
not pushing it on them. You just plant seeds and drop, little tidbits. And so it was very strategic.
Yeah. How did you learn all of this?
It was by trial and error. Some of it was just pure sales training,
Right.
but a lot of it was just trial and error, because the thing about calling all of your prospects was I missed so many opportunities. There were so many people on my list that were like the next guy to call, and then I'd get the blind RFP. Like, dear to whom it may concern, we were looking for somebody and blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And I was like, oh, man. It could have been, dear Mary, hey, it's been a while. We
Right.
have this, need. We'd love to talk to
Right.
you about it. Or I would already know about it. So those kinds of situations got me to think, there's a better way, a smarter way to do this.
Right.
So we're not always chasing behind the target, that we're always ahead of it, in front of them at all times, so that it's never cold. Because it takes a long time to warm them up. And even if you have a qualified lead that knows something about your business, that personal contact with them has to occur as well. So we would do the 5 touches. So we go to the Laker game. I drop a few hints about what you can do or what I can do, whatever. And we'd say, okay, on the next, I'd love to have Ralph come and talk to you about that. I can't really tell you all the details, but let's have Ralph. So that next meeting would be the 4th touch. Then they'd say, great, let's have a proposal. Well, at the proposal presentation, that's the 5th touch. So by then, it's nice and warm and fuzzy, and, they're calling you Ralph, they're calling me Mary, they're,
Right.
They know, how much I love the Lakers, they know how much you love painting,
Right.
And pretty soon, it's a really nice discussion about how do we do how do we close it and how do we start working together, as opposed to,
how much the price is.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you've built a strong relationship. There's a connection.
Yes.
There's an affinity. And they have a sense that you really care about them. Mm-hmm. It's not just give me the order and I want to make the sale. They have an authentic sense that you care about them.
And it's interesting. I want to touch on what you just said, that oftentimes what salespeople have done in the past is they go in, they go for the close, they give the best price, and then they disappear.
Right.
Because it's not worth first of all, they didn't build any value into their pricing.
Mm-hmm.
So there really isn't any time for them to take care of this client. Whereas if you build that relationship, by the
Right.
time you've made the deal, you're going to be taken care of.
Right.
Also important when you're dealing, back when I was working for this large organization, because they feel like they're going to be a little fish in a big sea and they're going to disappear and no one will ever call them back. So when they have a problem, they won't know how to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like banking at B of A. You want to ask for help with something and you're stuck in this phone maze of no personal contact with anybody.
Right.
To
Push
answer.
button 3
Yeah.
for this and 7 for that.
Exactly. So I think, when you think in terms of sales and marketing and prospecting, it's still all about the person. It's still all about the personality and would they want to work with you, because there's so many other people who do what you do. Unless your value proposition is so unique that it could be so unique that then you have to figure out how people can use you.
Right.
But the odds are that I'm not saying that there's a commodity, but there's a lot of them out there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's got to be a way to make it fit. And so we can go back to campaigns,
Right.
circling it back around so I didn't go off on too big a tangent.
Right.
So with the respect to the campaign, you are keeping sort of a theme in mind. So whatever the theme of that conference was, it was, say, coaching to increase sales.
Right.
Say, let's just use that as an example. And so what these people were all looking for is how to increase sales. Well, then we'd send all these letters out about, how to increase sales and what's going to be your ROI and what, profits and that kind of thing. And then you'd continuously follow up with each of these people. Now, those 5 touches take time. Mm-hmm. So if you have 100 people on that list, it's going to be tough to follow up with all of them. So you've got to constantly figure out a system
Right.
to stay in front of them. So whether that's like your newsletters that you send out
Mm-hmm.
on a weekly basis, or a way on your website, for example, for them to be able to ask a question and get a response back, if they want a human being to call them versus
Right.
get an electronic response, you get a feeling for that, and then it'll start to bubble up where all the real hot interest, the hot
Right.
prospects show up. But you constantly keep even the cooler ones. And I'm not saying cool in that you don't know them. I'm saying cool in that their need isn't right this moment. It's maybe somewhere down in the future.
Actually, a thought comes to mind that if you have a target in that audience, you could actually find out what their concerns are, and then actually I could speak to that. In other words, in the research, I could sort of work that into the presentation as well.
Well, there's a threat, which is if you already answer the question, then why would they call you back? So it's good I always call it a teaser.
Yeah.
It's good to I mean, you have to provide what you said you would provide
Right.
for purposes of the speech,
Right.
but you don't want to give it all away.
No.
You want to also, kind of dangle the carrot in front of them a little bit so that they want to have further discussions with you.
Right. Okay. So how long would one of these campaigns go? I mean,
Well, that's a really good question, because timing is important. Not just setting up the time in your calendar to do it, but when you do it. So, for example, if this, seminar happened in September 1st, then hopefully by October 1st, you've had some kind of contact with these people. Mm-hmm. Because you don't want too much time to pass and then it gets cold and they don't even remember what the seminar was about anymore.
Right.
So if it was of interest and they really showed some kind of a promising need there, you want to get to them before it's too late.
right. And then I would imagine that I could offer them an update on information from the seminar.
Oh, that would be, I think, the ideal way to get back in front of them, and
Okay.
probably a surefire way
Okay.
to.
Like a webinar.
Yeah, I would do a webinar or a podcast or, different types of ways to get back in touch with them. So the webinar and podcasts are great when you have a huge number of people.
Right.
If it was a smaller, more intimate group, then I would try to go with the one-on-one,
Okay.
the face-to-face contact where they, actually get to meet you and feel comfortable and feel confident that you can provide what they need.
Excellent. Excellent.
But what's great, so just to finish,
Sure.
what's great about the fact that you were one of the key speakers is you have built-in credibility because you were a speaker and they paid to be at that seminar.
Right.
So right away, you have credibility, so it's crazy not to follow up on those opportunities,
Yeah, it makes me want to set up more opportunities to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that it seems like an excellent opportunity for creating sales.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
What are some of the other ways that I can create opportunities, in the prospecting? Obviously referrals.
Well, referrals are essential because when you've got your satisfied customers on your list, or your list of satisfied customers, I found if you don't ask them, they're not always thinking about us. They're not only thinking about Ralph and Mary and, what can I do for them? It's more like, well, Ralph and Mary are taking care of me. I'm going to go along my way. But if you ask them, hey, are there any other companies that you know of that have similar needs? And then they'll go, as a matter of fact, I just having lunch with, XYZ, and they
Right.
definitely have a need in this area. So it's absolutely insane not to ask for a referral and to maybe offer a little something for that. Because usually they'll start feeling resentment if they don't get something in return, and they're constantly feeding you new business.
Right. Yeah, referrals has actually been our best source. Virtually, I'd say at least 85% of our businesses comes from referrals,
And that's where I think you are a master.
yeah,
You're the master of the referral
Right.
sourcing. The other way is to tap into business partners. There are large organizations. I know a lot of software consulting firms and a lot of the IT in the IT world have what they call strategic channel partners. And so channel partners are basically normally people who don't do what you do, but either have clients, the same exact clients you do, they do something different.
right,
Say you're a consulting firm and they'd be a law firm. That was a big one. When I was at Ernst & Young, we either worked a lot with certain law firms or we worked a lot with certain banks,
Right.
bankers, and that kind of group of people. And so those people also have to be treated like prospects.
right,
Because you want them to, they probably have relationships with all your competitors as well. And so if you've got a really good relationship with each of these people, you'll obviously get a lot more leads from them as well.
yeah. We work with an accounting firm, Tashima and Company.
Oh,
And
right.
We have a number of clients that we work in joint with them, and they're very, very resourceful, and we've created, done excellent work combining their accounting services and our coaching services, and caused some, amazing results with clients.
Yeah, and I think you can do that with almost any industry. There might be people thinking, oh, that doesn't really apply to me. But if you really sit down and think about it, there's a lot of different businesses that have where you have common customers.
Right.
And actually, one of the things I did, which is kind of interesting, I had a partner who worked for one of the banks. And when I was in the entrepreneurial services group, this guy was the most amazing salesperson that they had. I mean, he could talk to anybody. If they were on your target list and it was on his target list too, you were guaranteed an appointment. So I used to do whatever I could to take care of this guy. We'd take him to lunch, we'd take him to games, we'd do whatever it took to keep him happy because I would get every single appointment I wanted. So what did that mean? I didn't have to sit in the conference room for 2 hours and make a lot of calls to people I didn't know
Right.
because he would always get the lead. He always knew how to get in front of them, and we'd be having lunch with like the owner of a company just because he was so good at it. So that's another way to increase your sales
Right.
force. So the guy who doesn't have a team,
Right.
get some partners who do have a really good way of approaching other people and partner up with them.
Yeah, I like the partnership. I like looking for streams of opportunities. I like opportunities that come in bunches, like bananas.
Yeah.
So I like looking for that. So I want to remind you that we are still running our contest for our Healthy Business Checkup. We want you to qualify for that. You need to send in 3 actions that you will take to improve your business. And you send us those 3 actions and send them to Leanne at consulting2win.com. And we are going to draw those 3. We're going to make a drawing. The drawing will be on August 31st, and the winner of that drawing will end up with a checkup from one of our consultants, Leanne or Mary or Bonnie Landau, and we'll go over healthy business checkups to where it's a 2-session coaching session where we'll go over your business and take a look at all different aspects of it, and then give you some coaching on how to improve your business. We want to make sure that you check out our website at consulting2win.com. That's consulting, the number 2, win.com. We're also very shortly going to be offering a course called salestowin.com, or Sales to Win, excuse me. And that's going to be a 8-week or 8-session sales program led by the entire staff. And that's going to be an opportunity for everyone to get training on all of the different aspects of sales. We also have our blog. There's lots of different ways that you can connect with us. So we have our blog at consulting2win.blogspot.com. And we're also on Twitter at Ralph White Coach. So there's a lot of different ways for you to connect with us. So want to make sure that you contact us, and if you have any questions that you'd like us to consider for the show, please send them to us at Leanne at consulting2win.com. You have any final comments for the on prospecting, or like a final secret key that for opening a door? Or?
Well, I think one of the key things I always used, which was really helpful, was a script. And I know people feel that is they're not that comfortable with it, but when you have a very large list of people to call, I found that a script was helpful. And it didn't have to be something you did verbatim. It could just be talk points to make sure you hit all the key things and ask the key questions. So when you finally get them on the phone, you're not like, oh yeah.
Okay.
And I just found that it's really helpful. And by having a script, I always found when I reviewed it, I thought, oh, I got to remember to add this. Oh, and I have to. So it keeps you having great ideas, as opposed to saying, I'm just going to ask for such and such a person. So it goes back to being prepared. But I think the script is also something helpful.
Okay, good. So, like I said, to contact us with any questions, please send it to consulting or Leanne at consulting2win.com. And so we want to, give you a play for the week. So our play for the week is spend 1 hour per day prospecting for new business using the tools and the ideas that we generated today on the show. So that's our play for the week. So that, and then call us next week on the show and let us know what happened. What kind of results did you create out of doing that? So we want to thank you for being with us today and invite you to tune in next week and on Consulting to Win. Thank you.